Says an error occurred. We're going to do it anyway. A total absence of self doubt is the first sign of insanity. Admiral Sandy Woodward. I got all my wrong buttons.
3, 2, 1, 0.
You cannot subvert an enemy which doesn't want to be subverted. Subversion is the term, if you look in a dictionary or criminal code to that matter, usually is explained as a part of activity to destroy things like religion, government, system, political, economical system of a country. Starting from Hollywood movie makers to professors of political science and quote-unquote experts on Soviet affairs, Kremlinologists as they call themselves. No James Bond nonsense. The rest, 85%, is always subversion. Manipulation of terms. We think that subverter is a person who is going to blow up our beautiful bridges. But according to the law and law enforcement systems of the Western civilization, it's not a crime. Subversion can be only successful when the agent of subversion has a responsive target. Subverter is a student who comes for exchange, a diplomat, an actor, an artist, a journalist like myself. It's most of this activity is overt, legitimate, and easily observable if you give yourself time and trouble to observe it. Which means always a destructive, aggressive activity aimed to destroy the country, nation, or geographical area of your enemy. It's a two-way traffic. United States is a receptive target of subversion.
From high atop the battlements of Castle Curmudgeon, where nothing says lovin' like a wild boar in the oven. Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. America, and all ships at sea. Welcome to the Blast Radius. I am your intrepid correspondent and humble servant. Here is your Decline of Western Civilization news roundup for the work week ending the 8th of December, 2023. Dateline Dubai, Monday, 4 December. Former senator, failed presidential candidate, and charter member of the Narrow Birth Canal Society, John Kerry. Speaking at something called the COP28 Climate Conference in Dubai, which seems a bit like holding an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting at the Jose Cuervo factory, but this reporter digresses, says he is militant, I say, in his belief that not one more coal-fired power plant should be permitted anywhere in the world forever. Quote, and I apologize in advance for the tortured syntax, but this is a direct quote. We don't need that necessarily to tell us we ought to be transitioning out of coal. There shouldn't be any more coal power plants permitted anywhere in the world. That's how you can do something for health. And the reality is that we're not doing it. I've become more militant about coal plants because I don't understand how adults who are in positions of responsibility can be avoiding responsibility for taking away those things that are killing people on a daily basis. End quote. Reached for comment, former senator, failed presidential candidate, and charter member of the I Invented the Internet Society, Albert Gore Jr. said, quote, who the hell told John Kerry he gets to be the climate change guy? I think that fucker needs to get off my Kool-Aid, frankly. Remember back when I made that lame-ass movie with all the fancy computer graphics showing how every coastal city in America was going to be inundated underwater by 2015? Does that not count for anything anymore? I think John Kerry and I should settle this matter in a Hell in a Cell match at the next WrestleMania, and the winner gets a championship belt that says, climate change guy. Reached for comment, WWE Chief Operating Officer Triple H said, quote, are you fucking kidding me? I just brought CM Punk back to the company, so I'm kind of on thin ice here as it is. So I'm going to take a hard pass on this slap fight between these two pathetic old grifter douchebags, end quote. Dateline Washington, Tuesday, 5 December. The presidents of Penn, Harvard, and MIT testified on Capitol Hill on Tuesday, and each one refused to confirm, despite being given at least 5 opportunities each, that calls for the religious genocide of all Jewish people would constitute bullying or harassment under the respective codes of conduct for their respective high-priced diploma mills. Sorry, universities. Penn President Liz McGill, MIT President Sally Kornbluth, and Harvard President Claudine Gay. A black woman named Gay? Jesus Christ, she's one disability away from winning the intersectional Powerball lottery jackpot. All stated under repeated questioning from Representative and Harvard alumna Elise Stefanik of New York that calls for an entire group of people to be violently killed on the basis of their religion might not necessarily violate campus hate speech rules, and it would depend on the individual context. In other words, each one of these university presidents openly intimated that there exists some sort of context where it's fine to say you think a certain ethnic group ought to be eradicated from the face of the earth. President McGill of Penn has since resigned in disgrace, while President Gay of Harvard issued a statement saying, quote, "Look, I really regret having said the quiet part out loud. Please, please, please don't make me resign from my fabulously well-paid job that I only have in the first place because I tick so many delicious intersectional boxes," end quote. President Kornbluth of MIT issued her own statement saying, quote, "I don't see what the big damn deal is. It's not like anybody said something really offensive like boys have a penis and girls have a vagina," end quote. While it's widely expected that Presidents Gay and Kornbluth will also be forced to resign in disgrace just like President McGill, we can all rest easy, knowing they will each get their own Netflix documentary and a 7-figure book deal and a job as a CNN contributor, because we've seen this movie enough times by now to know how the drill works. When you're a disgraced woke idiot, you always fail upward and you always get richer. Dateline, Tuscaloosa, Alabama, Wednesday, 6 December. Republican presidential candidates, and we use that term advisedly, Chris Christie and Nikki Haley have joined together in one strong, unified voice of small government conservatism, at least that's what they call it, to declare that government has no business in passing legislation to ban ghoulish Frankenstein pervert doctors from hacking off the healthy sex organs of minor children. According to Christie, quote, and yeah, this is a real honest to God quote, "Republicans believe in less government, not more, in less involvement with government, not more government involvement in people's lives," end quote. And with moral clarity like that, I think we can all agree that the future of American conservatism is in good and capable hands, except when those hands are holding a box of jelly donuts, in which case he might get distracted for a while. Meanwhile, Ms. Haley, who recently began accepting huge campaign checks from some of the same Democrat mega donors who helped propel Joe Biden to the presidency in 2020, allegedly, said, quote, "I know I am the best candidate to defeat Bill Clinton in 1996. It is time for Bob Dole to step aside, or I will kick him right in the dick with my high heels. Because have I mentioned that I am a woman with a vagina and everything?" End quote. Dateline, Washington, Thursday, 7 December. Presidential son, stripper impregnating crackhead, and guy who single-handedly got my channel monetized, Hunter Biden, was indicted this week on a dozen federal tax evasion charges, including 3 felonies. As part of the filing, it was revealed that Mr. Biden spent an eye-watering total of $872,000 on hookers and porn during the 4-year period ending 2019, which, for those fans keeping score at home, averages out to $218,000 per year, $4,192 per week, and $599 per day. And that's just what he reported to the IRS. It doesn't include any drugs even, which I imagine this works roughly along the same lines as Hollywood budgets, where you spend an average of twice again the production budget on the marketing and the promotion. So long story short, as a semi-educated guess, that's probably on the conservative side, this dude basically spends half a goddamn $1 million per year on sex and drugs. Reached for comment, President and semi-animated cadaver Joe Biden said, quote, "I love my son, and he is still the smartest guy I know. Because it takes a real galaxy brain sort of a genius to bang that many hookers and consume that many narcotics and still be alive at age 53. Now I gotta run because it's almost time for Murder, She Wrote," end quote. Dateline Kiev, Friday, 8 December. The Kiel Institute, a German research body that tracks donations to Ukraine, says that in the 12-month period between November 2022 and November 2023, individual monetary donations to the Ukrainian war effort have decreased by 90% on a year-over-year basis. Reached for comment, your favorite woke douchebag friend or family member said, quote, Ukraine? Come on, man, that is so last year. That's not even next current thing anymore. It's last current thing. And being a conscientious woke progressive means you are always singularly focused on next current thing. I mean, I replaced the Ukraine flag in my social media profile with a Palestine flag like weeks ago. You old fogies need to do a better job keeping track of current events. End quote. Reached for comment. Ukrainian President Muscle Shirt Jesus said, quote, sorry, can't talk now. I am too busy canceling elections, burning down churches, and ordering the assassination of anybody who questions the wisdom of my policies. You know, because democracy. End quote. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is your Decline of Western Civilization news roundup for the week ending in shit. I've only got 2 weeks to figure out what to get my wife for Christmas. And with that, we send it over to my distinguished and illustrious co-host, featured in the latest edition of People Magazine's Top 50 Most Influential Large Furry Hominids Under 50 list, your friend and mine, the one and only, Mr. Caucasian Sasquatch.
Tactical nuke incoming!
You need to put your merch and dono links here.
Put your merch and dono links here.
Just so you know, bro.
I tried to find a membership link to put there, and I don't know how to make a membership link. So that's how hopeless I am at all this stuff.
Well, you just basically, oh, wait, you don't have one yet, do you? It's actually part of your channel, isn't it? Okay.
I don't have a merch link yet. I do have plenty of merch though. See?
That's cool.
Not lying.
I got me an I Heart Harry Nuts sticker.
Beautiful. We're gonna get me one of them.
As far as I know, you have to actually find the hairy nuts in the wild. he doesn't sell them. He doesn't do merch.
That shouldn't be too much trouble.
You'd figure, except there's only one, and he's way bigger than you think. How was your week? How'd you do this week? What's going on?
My week was splendid. How was yours?
Pretty spiffy. I found out that a brake caliper can operate on hopes and aspirations if you have enough of them.
You just need to believe.
I did not know, man. I took that wheel off and the caliper kind of came off in my hand, and I looked at what the pin was made of and was like, oh my God, that's not even a brake pin. Hold on. And I got looking at it and I just stood up and got in my wife's car, went and got a whole new little assembly and put it back in there. And here's my first miracle. You know the little pistons inside the caliper?
Mm-hmm.
There's little bitty thin pig metal cups. They're oval shaped.
Yeah, the one you have to crank down so you can get the caliper off.
Right. They are oval shaped and smeared, function fine, and are not leaking.
As all things should be.
My first miracle. That thing should be leaking and it should not function. I think we can all agree on that point. So, yeah.
But if you hit it out of the park, it doesn't matter whether it was on purpose. You still get to circle the bases.
That's true. That is true. And unfortunately, I don't learn anything from doing something correctly. And so when I savant my way into stupid things that work, I don't know how I did it, and I'm not able to repeat it because I'm not sure exactly what I did. But everybody, that's genius. And I'm like, what part? what did I do?
I agree. Just don't ask me to do it a second time.
Exactly. I can't repeat the performance. All right. So we are going over the Falklands War for the meat and drink of this one, or do you?
Or we're going to talk about He Who Must Not Be Named.
Lord Voldemort himself, huh? I mean, I could always just go black over here.
The A to the J.
The AJ himself. All I'm trying to say is
frog's gay.
Anyway,
Which,
so
speaking
yeah,
of which,
apparently,
you know, as much fun as it is to meme that line and laugh about that line because it's a funny line, he was right about turning the frogs gay. You know why? Because he was talking about a perfectly true thing. Because your Interior Department actually spent something like $30 goddamn million saying if they could induce homosexuality by chemically altering the water that amphibians were swimming in. That's a real thing that your tax dollars did. So I guess it's up to each American to decide whether that is a prudent expenditure of their resources.
no, it's not. That's up to the CIA to figure out how to use it against Americans. But we're going to skip right over that like it never happened. You know, just like MK Ultra, Project Mockingbird, all the other things that never, ever, ever actually happened ever.
And no person named owns J Lex A ever existed anywhere on this planet, and we would never talk about him on this program because you're not allowed to talk about that person.
So they've allowed this person who shall not be named back into the hallowed halls of X,
or shitter, as we lovingly know it around here.
Shitter, yeah.
Xitter, shitter.
I think it has the ability to either being a growing situation for X, shitter, or it could be the end of days.
And I think the owner of Shitter is trying to force the issue with his little bitch slapping that he delivered to a certain Disney CEO last week.
X.
That was so very delicious. Hi, Bob.
X CEO. X.
Yeah. outgoing CEO.
I think this matters. I hope it matters.
Because when each movie you make loses multiple hundreds of millions of dollars, I think you better be looking toward the exit if you know what's good for you.
What's the most recent one that they made? Wish?
Marvels. Oh, I guess Wish was after the Marvels, but they both tanked spectacularly.
Okay, let me. All right, so I sat down and watched Wish accidentally the other day while I was taking.
Oh, did you?
I was going through the Disney thing to see what was new, and apparently, if you leave it somewhere long enough, it just starts playing something. Or maybe I sat on the remote. Anyway, it started playing.
Oh
Wish.
wow, I didn't know that. That's God.
I don't know that it does, but I ended up watching Wish somehow, and I don't really consciously remember making that decision. But I was like, well, screw it. Everybody hates it. I'll just sit here and let it play.
Right, and sometimes when you're in the business we're in, you have to watch things you know are shitty just so that you can talk about how shitty they are.
Okay, so let me do that for a moment. The first half of this film is a Disney movie. Feel free, go watch it. It's actually pretty well put together. If you can get over the fact that this young lady is both stunningly beautiful and oddly quirky, which is something that doesn't really work because it's the ones that aren't stunningly beautiful that are quirky. That's how they get through in life, is by being the quirky chick, you know.
Right. It's supposed to be the one or the other and not both.
Right. And Tangled can be an exception because she had absolutely no social skills from not being a social creature. And so in her case, she can get away with both beautiful and quirky because she has no idea she's beautiful. In this case, however, we're dealing with a 16-year-old girl who decides that everyone should have their wish granted regardless of validity. In a kingdom where the king pays all the taxes, gets rid of all the trash, wishes away all the problems, and the only problem, the only issue in the entire movie is that some people don't get their wishes granted because they're either too vague or not directly useful to the kingdom, or would be antithetical to the kingdom, or something like that, right? Where you can't grant the wish or you'll break the kingdom. You live here for free. You don't pay for your bread or your services or your water. Everything's good and well maintained. There's clean streets. There's police. I mean, it's a great place. And yet she breaks
the mythical socialist utopia they're always talking about.
Yes, and yet she breaks the whole system because he won't grant her grandfather's wish, which is to inspire a generation. But inspire them to what? Overthrow the kingdom? What are you? That's too vague, man. It's
It
too
doesn't
vague.
sound
So-
like a place you'd want to overthrow if it's that utopian already.
Exactly. So here's what happens. Homie is so offended by being told that he should buck up and get on the right side of history and grant everyone's wishes that he goes to the evil book that he keeps put up because it's too dangerous for even him to mess with. Where he opens the book, his soul gets sucked out, a demon from another plane is placed in his place, and then we have the evil villain who is merely evil for the sake of being evil and not to achieve any greater power. He is already king. He already rules over all that he can see. Even the other kingdoms in the world have just abided by his existence because he's such a benevolent guy.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't that also sort of a plot point in the first Doctor Strange movie? Where there's this one certain book that you're never supposed to open up because the spells in it are just too goddamn powerful and they have a world-ending potential.
Right? Yeah, no, you're not wrong. It's also a pretty good hook on a Terry Pratchett adventure. Rincewind is still running somewhere. Wizard. Sorry, was that too deep? We can get into the Week 3 men too if we wish.
Yeah, I actually did spend some time on Disney Plus this week, even though I've generally been avoiding it lately because it seems like every time I open the thing up, it's just a wall of like rainbow shit and strong, powerful women of color. But
go check out the new Loki series. They tried to redeem themselves. I'm not.
Oh,
sure.
I watched it.
Okay.
You know what was funny about that is I started watching, season 2, episode 1, and the Ouroboros guy. I keep looking at him and listening to him, and I'm like, I know this guy from somewhere, but I can't figure who the hell he is. And it gets to the end of the episode, and I look it up, and I'm like, holy shit, it's Short Round from Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom.
Deep cut.
Yeah, seriously, deep ass cut right there.
You stared at him for a solid 54 minutes going, I know this guy. Like he was a neighbor in high school or something.
I was positive I knew him from somewhere and I just couldn't place it because normally when you give me an hour to figure out where I recognize somebody from, I can figure it out. But I was drawing a blank here.
I was sitting there. We put it on. We were watching it. And Rachel's like, I recognize that guy. And I'm like, that's Short Round. And she didn't say nothing for a while. And she goes, it's what? It's a Short Round from Indiana Jones. What are you talking about? Dr. Jones, Short Round. Oh, wow, that's him. I'm like, yeah. But I knew it the second I laid eyes on him. I was like, I thought it was the dude from like the Goonies first. The little inventor kid.
Yeah, I didn't have a freaking clue who it was or where I knew him from. I just knew he was familiar somehow.
Hey, Danny. My one issue with Tangled is if they wanted a dog in the story, they should have put a dog in the story instead of a horse. That's my only complaint. Otherwise, it's a pretty good movie.
Danny brings up another bit of trouble that Mr. Iger seems to have gotten himself into this week because it seems like there were some not necessarily legal shenanigans that took place when during the whole however many decades it was where Disney basically had its own fiefdom in the middle of Central Florida where they were basically a quasi-governmental authority. And how about let's not give entertainment brands quasi-governmental authority? How about let's just agree that never ends well and not do it anymore? Maybe that's just me.
If I'm not mistaken, that original contract was actually written out for one Mr. Walt Disney himself and was indeed intended to be bequeathable. So they were operating, in my opinion, they were operating outside the purview of their license to begin with.
And it seems, according to the reports, that's not the worst of it as far as operating outside the auspices of the agreement, because they were it sounds like they were doing a whole bunch of shit that they knew they shouldn't be doing, and that wouldn't surprise me in the least, knowing what I know about Bob Iger.
Not just Bob Iger, but I mean, have you taken a
Oh
look
yeah,
at
I mean, probably going all the way back to the Michael Eisner era. That shit's been going on because when you carve out an entire chunk of a state and give it to a private company and say bye, have fun, you're probably going to wind up with some shady stuff going on eventually.
they have their own police?
I know, Mickey Mouse police, for Christ's sake. That's a real thing in the actual world.
And ladies and gentlemen, this coming directly from Sasquatch, that's some Mickey Mouse bullshit. You can quote me on that.
If they were willing to have cop hats with little Mickey ears on them, I would forgive the whole thing.
I might
Because
get
go big or go home, I say.
right. All right. So what was the shindig we was going to be doing over here? What part of this do you want playing?
I think any part is good. It was, I don't know why I don't even know about this channel, which seems amazing.
We're going to watch the Brett's party for a second now.
Okay.
All right. So we're discussing the Falklands War, correct?
Yes.
All right. So give me the pitch on how the Falklands War was started.
The Falkland Islands lie 500-600 miles off the eastern coast of Argentina. They have been a British possession since the early 19th century, first decade of the 1800s. The people in the Falkland Islands, that's probably one of the few places you can still go in the world where the entire population are hardcore British patriots. You can't go any place in England and find that anymore. But in the Falkland Islands, they are very, very attached to their British identity. And as the British Empire receded and retracted and downsized itself, to use the modern parlance, after the Second World War, the Falkland Islanders have always been very, very adamant about the fact that they want to be British subjects. They don't want anybody else's sovereignty. Meanwhile, the Argentinians have always been of the position that, well, these goddamn islands are closer to our country than anybody else's country, so they should be our possession, and we want them. And this is a very big animating cause for Argentinian nationalists. So the decades after World War II, it became increasingly expensive and inconvenient for the British to directly administer these islands. And they were actually looking for a way out. Throughout the 1970s, there were a series of negotiations between Britain and Argentina, where Britain said, maybe we could transfer sovereignty to you on paper, but then we'll do a thing like we did with Hong Kong, where we'll sign a 100-year lease. And you'll have sovereignty, but we'll still be administering it, and the people can still call themselves British, and we will encourage them and give them maybe some financial incentives to repatriate themselves to New Zealand. And that was really what the British wanted to happen for a long time. But then the Royal Navy gets so downsized and loses so much ability to project British power onto the other side of the world that the Argentinian military junta, which takes power in the late 70s, they say, British military power has become so degraded that we could probably just go take these islands and nobody would say boo. The British might be glad to be rid of them because they're seen as, nothing but an inconvenience and a drain on their resources. And
True.
So in the spring go ahead.
They didn't take into account exactly how much stiff upper lips the Brits had. These boys,
especially not Brits who are the descendants of British colonialists, because those are the fiercest British patriots you're likely to still find on this planet. I think the only places you could go where it is still 100% socially acceptable to be a British patriot would be the Falklands and the Channel Islands. Jersey and Guernsey, and that's because those islands were occupied by the Germans during the Second World War. And so they very much value their British patriotism. On the actual island of Britain itself, I mean, we all know how that goes. They've adopted a civic religion of basically self-flagellation and self-loathing, that Britain is bad, the British Empire was bad, we should let every immigrant come in and shit all over us, and we know how that drill goes. But
yeah, just like San Francisco.
Yeah, not all that much different. But so in the spring of '82, when the Argentinians are convinced, and the Argentinian regime at this point finds itself on thin ice. They think they are on the brink of a popular revolution, because they've got inflation running about 600%. And if you think 11% Biden inflation is bad, just try to imagine 600%. And they think, we got to do something pronto to get everybody on board with some big, great nationalistic cause. So they say, God damn it, we're going to go invade Las Malvinas, which is what the Argentinians call the Falkland Islands. They think we're just going to go in and grab them. And even if they wanted to, the British have so badly degraded their own military power that they couldn't come and take the islands from us if they wanted to. And so that will save our regime. That will make everybody happy with us. They won't think so much about the inflation thing. So that's the plan. That's what we're going to do. They start off with a little invasion of South Georgia Island, which you will remember if you're a regular viewer of this program, which is the same island where Shackleton and two of his buddies made their improbable overland crossing after the voyage of the James Caird to get to Grytviken and arrange rescue for the men they had left on Elephant Island. But at this point in 1982, South Georgia, it's still a British possession, but nobody really goes there except people who are collecting scrap metal from the rusted out ship hulks in the harbor. So that's what Argentina does first. That, you know, the big softball right down the middle. Let's just go take the unoccupied island. We'll raise the Argentinian flag. We'll call it a victory, and once we've got that, then we'll use that as a staging point for operations on the Falklands.
Right.
And then
Here's
they
the problem with that premise is the very second somebody looks over with one of them their telescopes they got and notices that Argentinian flag on the possession of Her Majesty's Navy, that doesn't go over well with any Brit anywhere ever under any circumstances.
Nope. A lot of British people rediscovered their nationalism in a hell of a big damn hurry when that happened.
They looked around and went, wait, what? No, blackguards. And that was it. They picked up their muskets and went off to war, man. These guys and these boys were serious.
Margaret Thatcher, of course, is the British Prime Minister at this point, but she's been in there for about a year and a half, but she's not on a very strong footing. She's not all that powerful because she hasn't really been able to do much to correct the economic malaise that was the reason her party got voted into power in the first place. So she's sort of walking on a knife edge here. She has to decide, do I want to send our forces to retake these islands, or do I just want to call it a fait accompli and condemn the islanders to being Argentinian citizens? And but it's very quickly decided that nobody is really okay with that in Britain, and they're going to have to go and fight. But the problem with going and fighting is that the Royal Navy has downsized itself to the point where they don't really have weapons and equipment that are designed for projecting British power all the way across the globe anymore, like they used to have. They have reduced themselves to being really little more than a littoral combat force. All of their assessments say that the only conflicts in which they are likely to be involved are either in the North Atlantic or the Mediterranean, and they're going to be operating in conjunction with the United States and their other NATO allies. It doesn't enter into their thinking that they would ever need to operate on their own to go many thousands of miles away and fight another sovereign nation in an
Right.
old-fashioned traditional war.
There's a tidbit to this war that has always tickled me pink because it's a really weird thing unless somebody knew this was going to happen. The forces that were available to fight the Falklands War in the early days was initially supposed to be, I think, 22 or 29 uh, just basic infantrymen. They weren't anything to write home about, not Royal Commandos or anything special
Well,
like
that
that.
was the garrison they had on the Falklands was exactly that. It was 29 Royal Marines under one captain, and that was all of your territorial defense.
That's what was supposed to be there, but because it just so happened to occur during a changing of relief detail, there was twice as many Marines available and a handful of random other guys. And all of the random other guys went, wait, what, war? No, I'm signing up immediately. They got a 24-hour beat in on how to be a Marine real quick and got marched out with the rest of them, because that leaves, what, 63 total to fight this whole shindig?
And the military historians really love this war because there are so many things that make it completely unique in world history as far as the types of weapons that are being arrayed against each other. And it's also unusual in the sense that the defending forces are operating from sea and the attacking force is operating from land. So the Argentinian Air Force, they've got kind of a weird mishmash of they've got some French Mirages, they've got some American A4s and F4s, they've even got a few British planes, and they are able to operate off land. The British have nothing but the freaking Sea Harrier. The Sea Harrier, which was never designed to be an air superiority fighter, and it's so damn slow you might as well be flying a P-51.
Yeah,
So,
it's not great. It's excellent for what it was designed to do, which was
right.
basically carry small parcels from location to location and take off vertically. It does that really quickly, like faster than a helicopter. So yeah.
And they do have two aircraft carriers at this point, HMS Invincible and HMS Hermes. But we shouldn't think of these as fleet carriers in the American sense, because these are more along the lines of what we would call escort carriers, like 20,000 ton displacement. They are only able to launch aircraft because they're Harriers and they've got the little ski jump thingy. But these are
Said they got a ramp.
Yeah, these are comparatively tiny platforms compared to what Americans think of as an aircraft carrier. And again,
I want to reiterate that point. I had a conversation with a Brit one afternoon. We were talking about aircraft carriers, and I said, man, I don't think you understand exactly what type of comparison. Like, this is bananas to apples. This is not even a comparison. We wouldn't really classify that as an aircraft carrier. That's more of like an assault frigate or something like that we put messenger buoys on. Because here's the thing: there's 5,000 people on a modern aircraft carrier. If they'd have had one of these things in near the Falkland Islands and the damn thing sank and half the survivors swam to shore, Argentina would never have had a chance to take it. God forbid it's functional.
yeah. And even still, like we alluded to a moment ago, the Sea Harrier is designed for attacking surface level targets and maybe shooting down an unarmed observation or AWACS early warning plane. It is never designed to be an air superiority fighter that has to do battle with other air superiority fighters.
Yeah, it was just not designed for a dome defense of any description. Its purpose was to short range intercept things that were coming in to attack the ship, and that was basically its only purpose.
Just as the carriers from which they are being launched were never designed to operate more than 500 or 600 miles from the shores of Great Britain. So
right.
they have a job on their hands all of a sudden that they have really handcuffed themselves through budget cuts into. It's going to be a closely run thing, even getting your forces to the area, basically, and then you don't have the tools for the job.
Yeah, no, they were and severely undermanned as well. Even though the location was overmanned by technicality, it still was understaffed beyond all recognition. It would be very difficult to defend that location with the number of men they had, unless they were all trained soldiers. Because I mean, the local militia could only be used for watchouts. I mean, hell, they didn't even have any weapons.
Oh, and that's another one of the great equalizers in this war, because what do we always talk about? The difference between a professional military and a conscript military.
Right.
Because in this case, Argentina, they really have every advantage in terms of numbers and equipment and disposition, but the guys they're fighting are professional soldiers. And that winds up making a big damn difference at the end of a war. This is also, it's really the only war since the end of the Second World War where two sovereign nations have fought each other in a conflict where every area of combined arms was brought to bear. I mean, you've got cases like the Iran-Iraq war. That's purely a land war. The Russia-Ukraine war. That's a land war with a little bit of an air component. But this war was land, naval, and air, and that's the only example of that post 1945.
Right.
And you've got a weird mishmash of weapons too, because we talked about the Argentinian Air Force already. The Argentinian Navy, every single vessel they have, surface vessel, submarine alike, all of them are World War II American surplus. The General Belgrano, the cruiser that famously got sunk by the British, that's the former USS Phoenix. And all of their submarines, I believe, were Guppy class, which the ones that acquitted themselves admirably in Leyte Gulf. But this is all 40-year-old equipment at this point. So that's an area. Go ahead.
Which is not to sell it short. I mean, it's deadly and would be dead against modern shipping. And so it's not to be undersold. But at the same time, this is a 20-year-old military taking on 40-year-old hardware, software, and how half the people that were in the Argentinian military hadn't been actually trained in battle. So they're just dry shooting their shot.
Yep. And when the bullets start flying, it becomes pretty easy to tell pretty quickly the difference between a conscript army and a professional army, even when you have the other guys massively outnumbered.
Oh, position has a lot to do with this. And I think one of the features of this war was how much the Falklanders identified with being British over being Argentinian. I think we can both agree that there was no chance of holding either of these islands if a significant group of people had rose up and been like, no, we're Argentinian. It might have gone.
If there had been the slightest willingness of the islanders to accept Argentinian sovereignty, the British would have been happy to give the islands up years or decades ago, sometime in the 60s or 70s. But 2,000 people sometimes, just in their adamancy of wanting to remain British subjects, can determine the course of history, because they said, no, fuck no, we're British subjects. We have always been British subjects. We don't want to be Argentinian. So come liberate us, God damn it.
Right? Yield black and tads, come on.
Yeah. And so the hand of the British government was forced. And I think it might have been interesting to see what happened if the government in power at the time of the invasion had been a Labour government and not a Margaret Thatcher conservative government, because I don't think a lady like Margaret Thatcher ever would have been willing to say, oh, let's just let it go. We won't fight. It's too expensive.
Her iron underwear would have twisted.
Yep. It's too dodgy of a logistical proposition. And then, of course, like you said, even though the Argentinian Navy is using World War II surplus American surface vessels and submarines, they still managed to inflict pretty heavy losses on the Royal Navy, because they got 2 frigates sunk, and they got one of their big transports sunk, the MV Atlantic something or other. God damn it, I can't remember the name right now. But it was the ship that was carrying all of the helicopters that the Royal Marines were supposed to use to conduct the ground invasion. When time for the ground invasion came, that ship gets sunk. But the actual Marines, the ground troops, they are all on they're all on the QE2, a requisitioned passenger liner. So these guys, they are trained in a modern land invasion, which means you fly in on helicopters and you enter the combat zone that way. But then the ship gets sunk that has all your choppers on it, and all of a sudden you have to improvise a World War II style amphibious invasion that none of your men have been trained for. And what a loop that throws into your battle plan.
Can you imagine that conversation? Because these are Brits, it didn't go the way it would have been if it was an American, because one of them would have said, "Oh, nuts." But when it comes to it, it's like homie sitting there with his pipe. Well,
Atlantic Conveyor. That's it. Sorry.
What was it?
Atlantic Conveyor. Right.
Homie sitting there with his pipe, puffing on it, and they're like, "Well, we've lost all of our helicopters. That's going to make things a bit difficult."
Yeah, that's a great time for a bit of legendary British understatement.
Yeah, that stiff upper lip just being far too stiff.
The ship with all your choppers and half of your provisions on it gets sent to the bottom, and you call up London and you say, "We've had a spot of trouble here."
Exactly. A spot of bother. We'll handle it and get back to you. And they do.
Stiff upper lip and all that.
Exactly, dude. You're pretty good at that. You're way better than I am.
Right back.
So I've got a curiosity to kind of put on the table, lay at the feet of those that would answer the question. Hypothetically speaking, let's back up the clock here and look at the Falklands War from a losing perspective. Let's say the Brits they execute the entire thing, the choppers go down, but in this history, this alternate history, the Marines go down too. The war is lost. There is no Falklands War. It's called a police action. And those are now Argentinians, along with the captured Marines that were taken. They're also patriated to Argentina. What happens to the rest of world politics from that one change?
It's impossible to say, but they do not look the same.
Yeah, no, Argentina. Go ahead.
Yeah. I think it's impossible to say that it wouldn't be drastically different, especially in the sphere of British-U.S. relations, because the Thatcher government was actually quite shocked that we, the United States, chose to remain neutral and take a hands-off approach, because we had gotten, to our eternal shame, we had gotten pretty cozy with the military junta that was currently running Argentina in these days, because they were anti-communist, and we were willing to jump in bed with anybody who was anti-communist, right. even if they were doing exactly the same kind of roundups and mass executions and all the stuff that communists do. If they said they were anti-communist, we were their friends. And so even when our closest ally goes to war with somebody in our own hemisphere that we've decided to go to bed with, Reagan and Alexander Haig say, "Sorry, can't do nothing. We like these guys. We're in bed with them. They're anti-communist. You're on your own, Maggie."
But is that the first thing that changes politically? Suddenly America is involved in the Falklands War, and there is a Falklands War, and Brits don't lose the Falklands because America got involved?
That is a possibility. Yeah, it's impossible to say how that might have gone.
I know, but that's part of what the fun is, right?
So,
So hypothetically,
it's such a. In the grand scheme of world history, it's such a minor conflict with such minor numbers of combatants involved. But the political implications are so far reaching. Like you say, if you change any little bit of the outcome,
Right.
we
Well,
might be in a rather drastically different world today, especially in terms of U.S.-British relations.
Suddenly we have an American base off Argentina because that's how that works, right? If we're going to show up with all of our stuff,
and that is exactly how that would have gone. If we had agreed to be the ones to go in and liberate the islands, then the price would have been that we get the islands.
whether we get the island or we just get military presence on the island, sort of a Japanese sort of protectorate type thing.
Even though there's not really any reason why any imperial power would want the Falkland Islands. It made sense. It made sense in the 19th century why Britain wanted them, because they needed it when all their ships were running on coal. It came in really handy as a coaling station. For example, the SS Great Britain, one of Isambard Kingdom Brunel's great engineering feats, it wound up as a rusting coal hulk in the Falkland Islands, whose whole purpose was resupplying the fuel stores of Royal Navy vessels who were traversing from one hemisphere to the other. But once you get into the age of oil and nuclear, then that purpose really goes by the wayside, but you're still left with a couple thousand islanders who say, no, we want to be British. You will not abandon us. Fuck off. Don't even talk about it.
Right. And that's kind of how that plays out. I don't think politically the world changes a whole bunch, except there's an additional American base in the Southern Hemisphere. I think that's it.
And I think Britain and Argentina only normalized their diplomatic relations just recently, like in the last 10 or 15 years.
A few years ago, there was some Argentina.
See, look how tiny that aircraft carrier is. That is a third of the size of one of our current, Gerald R. Ford class, let's say.
It still has a bow. How quaint.
Yeah, I mean, it's got a bow like a freaking cruiser. And the stupid ski jump. God, I hate those ski jumps.
I hate those things, dude. I thank you for taking it off. I was worried. I'd rather look at this guy. I think it's just
he's better than a ski jump. I understand why the ski jump has to exist, but it just looks so terrible as far as the ship silhouette. It just ruins the whole thing. I know I'm complaining about aesthetics, but God, it looks bad.
Yeah, it's not pretty. It's not pretty at all.
But yeah, the only kind of fixed wing aircraft you can launch off the Invincible class is a Sea Harrier, and the only reason you can launch it is because you got the stupid ski jump. You can't land it except vertically. So it's pretty half-assed aircraft carrier in terms of as aircraft carriers go.
I think you nailed it, dude. I'd call it an aircraft cruiser myself, but I mean, its displacement is closer to that of a cruiser. It's not even really the size of some of our battleships when it comes down to it.
Yeah, like I said before, it really has more in common with what we used to call escort carriers,
right?
Which is basically a third of the size of a fleet carrier, and it's only got a few aircraft on it, and you've got just barely enough room to put one Hellcat or one Corsair on the deck and get it airborne, as long as you're steaming into a stiff wind.
Yeah, you better be steaming into a stiff wind too.
Uh-huh.
That's right. Okay, so not too long ago, Argentina had a little bit of a snafu go on with what they said was an American spy ship, and the Americans claimed was a cruise vessel. You remember that?
I don't. Refresh me.
Oh, I'm not sure I can give you enough information. I can look it up though and see if I can find it right quick. I can't remember the details. I just remember reading the story, and it was oh no. Take it away, bud.
Yeah, but getting back to the other, from the 30,000 foot level, this war is basically if you take away jet aircraft and cruise missiles, this is basically a World War II style war being fought in the summer of 1982, especially after the Atlantic conveyor gets sunk and all the helicopters are gone, because then you've got, Royal Marines in little rubber rafts landing ashore doing a good old-fashioned amphibious invasion. But what a great equalizer the cruise missile is. Because you wouldn't think, based on the tail of the tape, put a Mirage 3 on one side and put a Sea Harrier on the other. There is no way that Sea Harrier should ever be able to defeat that Mirage. But the Sidewinder missile is the great equalizer. And so on a couple of occasions, a Sea Harrier actually did shoot down a Mirage, as improbable as that is. And this was really the last aerial war in world history where there was anything close to dogfighting actually going on. The way it is today, when air superiority fighters do battle with each other, they are firing missiles from way, way, way the hell beyond visual range. If you get within visual range of your opponent, you've done something way the hell wrong.
Yeah, things have messed up long before you actually make contact.
Which was one of the problems with Top Gun Maverick, but I'm willing to overlook it.
Okay, so I figured we would end up in this freaking Dollywick once the concept of air combat came up. So
yeah, you probably weren't wrong.
I've been thinking on it for a minute. I kind of want to bring up the guy that they used to kind of represent the Iceman analog. What was the name? Choke.
Shit, what was his name?
Blonde guy who was just that damn good. Everybody wants to hate
Powell.
Everybody wants to hate this guy. And I have to remind them every time they bring it up. They're like, oh, that dude, that asshole, that guy. I'm like, no, you got it wrong, bro. He was that good. It's not being an asshole when he's just stating facts, because he is that good. As soon as he seen homie was able to do it himself, he just shrugged and said, shit, if the machine can do it, I can do it. Let's do it. And did it. It was just that simple. He just did not personally believe it was possible. Oh, wait, it is possible? Well, shit, no problem. He can do it.
Hangman. That's him.
That's it, Hangman.
Can't believe I couldn't remember that.
Called him Choker. How about that shit?
That's fine. Well, Hangman, Choker, it's kind of the same principle, right? Because what happens when you get hanged?
Too many goth girls, bro. Anyway, so I just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention, that he wasn't a bad guy. He was just that damn good. You hate him because you're not that good. He's different from Iceman. Iceman was an asshole. This guy's just a prick.
Yeah, because there is a dividing line between being self-confidently arrogant and an outright asshole prick.
Right? I mean, he never quite crosses the line to just being the asshole Iceman was. However, he was every bit as talented and knew it. Was perfectly willing to tell you about it and give you a descriptive, flowery description.
And he never shows any outright disrespect toward Maverick. He never intimates that he's better just because he's younger and perhaps more accomplished in recent history.
But that's
because you would never act that way toward a commanding officer who has actual combat experience when you don't.
Who has legendary accolades to such an extent that he's been drummed out of every single Air Force unit he's been a part of, and yet hasn't lost his wings.
And there's another thing. There's another thing to bring up about the Falklands War is that it's the only war in the last 400 years where a member of the royal family has been in combat.
Oh yeah.
Prince Andrew was a helicopter rescue pilot operating off of HMS Hermes and acquitted himself admirably and was duly and properly decorated for it. And he doesn't get to wear his military uniform anymore, and I think that's fucking atrocious. I think that's shameful and awful.
Doesn't get to? Like they removed that from it, or
Yeah,
is-
his mother, back when she was still alive, forbade him from wearing his military uniform anymore. And I don't think there is any reason why you can do that to a combat veteran. No matter what shitty thing he is accused of doing.
I can get behind that. I don't have any particular problem with that one. Dude, it has been raining cats and dogs here for about 4 hours straight.
Has it?
It is still raining. Like, I'm surprised. I don't know if y'all can hear it behind me, but it is coming down hard enough that I'm kind of worried about my connection. But
75 degrees and sunny here, just like ever.
I haven't seen the sun in 3 damn days, and it's not because I'm tweaking. It's because this hasn't been up, man. My freaking
I guess we're supposed to have a son of a bitch of a windstorm here coming up in the next couple days. That's what they say.
My yard lights were on all day and all day yesterday, and they only come on when it's quote unquote dark.
Right.
They might have some fur growing on the top of them. I might need to get up there and dust them off.
You're in suburban Atlanta, right? If I'm not mistaken.
I wouldn't quite go that far. I'm a little bit further south, but yeah,
Okay.
you could kind of make that argument.
How close are you to Valdosta?
It's about the same distance between here and Valdosta as it is from here to Atlanta. I'm in what they refer to as middle Georgia. If you looked at Georgia as a dartboard and you threw a dart and hit the bullseye, my county would be that bullseye.
Does Moody Air Force Base still exist?
Not that I'm aware of, but I didn't know before it went away. So
yeah, that's where my dad did his pilot training.
I got an MP story. Back when I was a young fella and I'd just gotten my license, I went and got a job at a window factory, and I was working for this old crackhead. I didn't know at the time he was a crackhead. All I knew about the guy was that he was willing to pay me an extra $150 to do these deliveries to these really strange places. And I didn't really care because I was just driving the truck, right?
Yeah, why would you?
I didn't really think about it until one afternoon I ended up on a military base with a whole trailer full of windows, or I'm given a 30-minute pass. It takes me 45 minutes to find the lot that I'm supposed to deliver it into because they had half the base shut down for some type of operations that were going on. And so I ended up having to leave the base and go to a different entrance to come back in, which double registered me on 2 different timetables. And so I was suddenly a suspicious person. So my ass is on the
red flag fucking terrorist on the loose.
So my ass is sitting on this step on the top of a church that's not quite built. And I've got the windows for the church on the truck in front of me. Right. And I'm sitting there, and I shit you not, I had a sergeant rise up out of the ground next to me. That man was on top of me before I realized there were people. And on the same instant that I consciously realized that Humvee's coming here, he's in my left ear whispering, "What are you doing on my base, son?" I almost shit myself. I broke the cigarette that was in my hand and swallowed the smoke that I had currently in my mouth. And I almost crapped myself. I'm not even joking. I looked over and he's got
yeah. MPs are pretty scary when you're not ready to deal with them.
So suddenly there's a squad of Marines right in front of me that have all dismounted from their Humvee and have their 50 cal all trained right on me. They're all fucking smiling at me like this is the best fun they've had all day. And I'm just sitting there and I'm like, yeah, bud, I'm definitely going to need a cigarette for this one. He's like, I want to know why you're on the base. You see those
trying to deliver some shit, sir.
No, sir. I'm much more of a smart ass. I said, you see those windows? He said, yes, sir, I do. I said, well, God wants those windows in this church. I was beseeching to a higher power. He stood there for a minute and blinked, looked down at his feet, and he goes, how long was your pass? I said, 30 minutes at the first one and 25 minutes at the second one. That's why we're here. And I was like, yeah, well, that was 45 minutes ago. I'm way past all that, dude. All I need, if you sign this piece of paper, he's like, I'm not authorized to do that. So we had a little party on my truck where we went and looked through all kinds of stuff and had us a good old time. And then somebody showed up, signed my paper, and they escorted me off the base, drove me all the way up to the little thing, got out, told me to have a nice day. And I left. And I told that sergeant right before I left, I said, all right, only you know something. Hope I never see you again.
Yep. Been there, done that. Now, do we want to look at the tail of the tape for casualties and losses in the Falklands War? Because it's all pretty even, considering that it was a decisive British victory. But here's the difference between a professional army and a conscript army. That difference is the number captured. British captured 107. Argentines captured 11,313.
Right.
I don't even want to be here. Please capture me.
I got some World War II ammo and some World War II guns you can have. Oh, and all the intel I know is they're back over there somewhere with a World War II radio.
Yeah.
There.
Pretty much. I mean, killed British 285, Argentine 649, wounded British 775, Argentine 1657. Naval losses, they're pretty much split right down the middle. The British lost 2 destroyers, 2 frigates, 1 landing ship, 1 landing craft, 1 container ship, Atlantic conveyor, as we talked about before, 24 helicopters, most of which sank with the Atlantic conveyor, 10 fighters shot down. The Argentine Navy loses 1 cruiser, 1 submarine, 4 cargo ships, 2 patrol boats, 1 trawler, 25 helicopters, 35 fighters, 2 bombers, 4 cargo planes, 25 early warning aircraft, and 9 trainers. I don't know why they were flying trainers in an actual war, but I guess we'll need to investigate the answer to that. And 3 civilians killed.
I would guess that occurred after the first few flushes of fighters got shot down. I mean, you don't bring out
they probably were just using them for recon at that point, and they got a little bit too close and got their ass shot off by a well-placed Sidewinder or Sparrow.
Shot down. If the ship they were on went down, it would be scratched as a bogey.
Right. You raise a valid point. It could be that too.
So.
And also there was the operation where they had to retake South Georgia, which they wound up doing without any casualties on either side, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, 1 Argentine guy got his leg blown off on a submarine. I stand corrected.
How? Oh, never mind. I don't care.
He was situated in the conning tower, and there was a very well placed shot from onshore that cut right through the sail of the submarine and took his leg with it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Imagine
unluckiest son of a bitch in South America right there.
Yeah. He's like, one single shot actually struck a target this entire fucking war, and it was me.
And that was some extremely antiquated artillery that they were using to fire from onshore at South Georgia. It's not like they had any modern artillery emplacements on that son of a bitch.
Yeah, but let's be honest, man. Ancient artillery is just as effective as modern artillery if the range is good.
Yep. If it hits you, it'll still kill you.
It will fuck you right up, bro.
And there's a legless Argentinian who will tell you all about it.
Who testified to that very fact. Yes, sir. Tell me that's not one of the ugliest airplanes ever.
It is a goddamn ugly plane if there was ever a goddamn ugly plane. And that's an American plane, so it pains me to say that, but God, the A4 is an ungainly son of a bitch.
It just looks so
and the Blue Angels used to fly those, which is just absurd. I didn't like the Blue Angel shows when they were flying A4s, just because it's not a pretty airplane. It was so much better when they switched to the F-18s. Yeah. They were in F4s, which was fine. I mean, I wouldn't call the F4 a pretty airplane, but it's not ugly. Then they switched to the A4, which is ugly. And then they transitioned to the F-18, which looks perfectly fine.
That's also true. Danny makes another point. I call it a lesson in the condition you don't want your military to get into. It makes me wonder about the condition of our allies, or if it'll all fall on us. Yeah, no, that's basically why the whole woke commercial campaign that was going on in the Army has been completely rescinded. And now they're showing a bunch of strapping young American fellows running off the war, because I firmly believe they have every intention of sending American troops somewhere really, really, really soon. Another forever.
The really amazing, remarkable thing is that they ever thought that ad campaign was going to produce positive results. The people who run our Defense Department thought it was a good idea to run cartoon ads about chicks with two mommies. That's a real thing that happened.
I don't have a problem with chicks with two mommies wanting to join the Air Force or the Marines or the military in any capacity. I don't have an issue with any of that. What I have an issue with is attempting to beseech, to pander directly to a 0.0 something percent of the population and thinking that's going to have an effect on your numbers. I don't get that.
And what happened right when President and semi-animated cadaver Joe Biden took office and appointed Lloyd Austin the defense secretary? He said, we have to have a 3-day stand down so we can root out white supremacy in the armed forces. That is the most important challenge we face, is finding all the damn white supremacists. I mean, really?
I'm pretty sure that any attempt to do that would basically be marching orders for MS-13 to just walk in and take over the U.S. military.
And then, but we all know what that really was. It was an attempt to get rid of all the people who don't have Democrat Party approved social worldviews. And it only accelerated when we got to freaking COVID, because how many people did they throw out of the service just because they wouldn't get the goddamn stupid vaccine?
Oh, and they just sent out this big ass round robin memo saying, by the way, boys,
begging them to come back.
Those of you who would like to re-enlist, we can come straight back in directly on your current commission with no loss of anything, but you have to call us.
And can you imagine being treated that shamefully by an employer and wanting to go back? What the hell goes on in these people's heads?
Bro, these people got an other than honorable discharge, and
I know.
Want to do the thing. Right.
People who served with 100% honor and distinction got an other than honorable discharge.
That, I don't think that's acceptable. I think the federal government.
No, that is as unacceptable as a thing can get.
And
it's outrageous.
It's outrageous. Yes, that is exactly right. It is unbelievable that their concept of trying to deal with it is to say, oh, by the way, if you're willing to come back and finish your term, you can have your honorable discharge. What if they only had 6 months left? What if they only had 6 weeks? Are they supposed to sign back up for another 2 years to get their other than honorable discharge removed?
Yeah, and these maniacs just don't give a shit because their agenda is the only thing that matters. Now, Queen Bird, is that a real thing you're talking about?
No. Although I'll admit it will make them a little lighter on their feet and definitely lighter in the hills.
Because I remember all the way back when I was in high school, a little over 30 years ago, we had a substitute teacher at my school who was a Marine drill sergeant, and he was telling us about how they've just started this new experimental boot camp where everything's nice and soft and friendly and nobody yells at you. And even as a 17-year-old kid, I remember thinking, why the fuck would we want a Marine boot camp like that?
Right.
And I guess it's only gotten worse since then.
Well, I will confess one thing. When I was a younger feller, I used to play the old hacky sack a lot. And
that makes two of us.
Well, in the process of becoming something of a talent in that particular field, it occurred to me that dancers are really difficult to trip up. If you've ever tried to trip a dancer, it's almost impossible. They just roll over and land on their feet like cats. And so I went and asked a ballerina friend of mine. I was like, so how do you get so light on your feet? And she's like, the same way you do anything else, practice, except we do it in stiletto heels. So I went.
Okay, stop. Let me stop you right there. How is it that you have a ballerina friend?
Because she still teaches dance. I don't understand the question. Why not?
I wouldn't expect you to have a ballerina friend.
Hey, public school don't really filter.
Oh, okay.
So I might have a few surprising friends from school.
It just seemed incongruous, so I wanted to ask the question.
Actually, I went to prom with her. One of the proms. Yeah. She's a cute chick.
I went to both proms with my future wife.
I went to one prom with a deceased ex-girlfriend. She wasn't deceased at the time, of course. I went to another prom with the ballerina chick I was talking about. I went to another prom with my wife, and another prom I went and basically snuck a bunch of guys in. We all pretended it was none of these guys had tickets, but we all used the same ticket because they had this one guy that couldn't see that was reading the tickets, and we was like, oh, okay. So I went back over, we picked them up. The chicks went in, and I was supposedly there with Melissa, but I never actually saw her. She was never actually. I was hammered before I ever went in the door, dude. I think
I should put my 1991 prom picture up sometime and make the audience laugh hysterically.
Oh my God, I wouldn't dare. Oh Lord. First of all,
I'd do it. I'd do it in a heartbeat.
Dude, I'm in a small town and no one recognizes me on the regular as it is. So I don't know, dude.
How small?
50,000.
Yeah, that's about how small my town is. Well, not anymore. Maybe 60.
Now, the town I grew up in was 600.
Small enough where every so often I still run into people who know me from high school and I don't have the faintest idea who they are.
Right. I come across people very rarely. I'll have somebody that's like, hey, it's you. I remember you. Usually people look at me and they recognize me but can't place where they know me. And it's because I sat in front of them in 3rd grade. But I've gotten all this fixed. So
yeah, I seriously, I live in fear of being in some store and having my back turned and hearing somebody go, "Nate?"
Right. Oh my God.
Because I know I'm gonna turn around and have no fucking idea who it is.
Exactly. So I'm pretty sure he says the verboten name at least twice in here.
Oh, let's go for it. Let's go for it.
So this is Simon Webb. He does History Debunked. You can check him out. He has some very classically liberal concepts that he discusses on his channel. He's hated the world over for speaking facts and truth, the kind of facts and truth that you'd come across in, a mid-80s to mid-90s.
Which means we like him here on this program.
I have yet to find anything that I can directly say that he is wrong. There's a couple of points where he quotes things from other studies, not the ones that I'm familiar with, but those studies do exist and they do have the results that he because I just didn't know they existed, that kind of stuff. But
right,
I wouldn't necessarily say he's wrong. Yeah, no, I'll watch him 3-4 times a day. If he uploads a video, I'll check it out. He's good peoples. I did it all wrong.
Hello again.
Hi.
One of the ways in which right-wing people differ from those who are left-wing these days is that those on the right are more likely to be in favour of free speech. This is an odd reversal of what used to be the case until a few years ago. In both Britain and the United States, it always used to be right-wing folk who wished to limit free speech because they thought that blasphemy should be prevented and that sedition might be promoted if people could just say what they pleased publicly. Now, though, it is left-wing types who wish to prevent people speaking freely, lest they express ideas which are racist or transphobic, or in case they spread medical misinformation or rumours about current events. The left-wingers have a list as long as your arm of things that they feel people should be denied a platform to say out loud, whereas right-wing people want everybody to have the freedom to say what they please. Alex Jones is an American radio presenter and owner of a very popular website called InfoWars, and he suggests a number of things, such as the moon landings, are actually hoaxes. As it happens, I don't agree with a lot of what he says, but that's neither here nor there. The more that efforts have been made to suppress his views, the more popular he has become, and the more it looks as if powerful forces are trying to silence him and prevent his views being heard. This is bad news for everybody, because it means that the focus shifts from whether what he is saying is true or false to whether or not powerful people and organisations are trying to shut him up. Since this is almost certainly the case, it is then only a single step to concluding that he must be right, because those in authority are afraid of people hearing what he has to say. I can think of many reasons why people in authority wouldn't want somebody saying untrue stuff about guns and shooting. So the fact that people want to suppress Alex Jones' ideas doesn't tell me that they are necessarily true. What will decide whether or not what he is saying is true is really very simple. You just allow his views to circulate freely. In the course of time, the true things will be revealed, and anything which is false will be exposed. We don't need to be so cautious about protecting the truth in this way, or preventing people from saying stuff that we think might not be true or might be harmful. Truth can look after itself if we let it loose.
The truth is a lion and needs no protection.
Goddamn right.
It is for this reason that I'm glad to see that Alex Jones is back on Twitter, or X, or whatever it's called now. He can say what he pleases, and anybody at all can then give his or her opinion on what is said. It means that open debate will take place. Under those conditions, it will be very difficult for anything false to flourish. I've always been baffled at this idea that one mustn't be allowed to say that the Earth is flat, or that the Holocaust never happened, or that the moon landings or the shooting at Sandy Hook were
Kubrick's
hoaxes.
greatest work.
If you prevent people from saying such things and try to silence them, then of course this will simply make it look as though those things are very fragile and need to be protected from the rough people who deny them. This is absurd. It's in the nature of truth to flourish. If anything which Alex Jones says is not true, we can be sure that this will soon show up in the rough and tumble of Twitter. Stopping free speech only allows myths and conspiracy theories to grow, whereas exposing them to the light of day has quite the opposite effects.
The best way to discredit bad ideas is to let them be widely heard and dutifully rebutted.
I used to tell this joke. I still do sometimes, but it's not as timely or as topical as it once was. So I had my kids collecting change for a long period of time, and we had this one big 5-gallon water jug, and for years they collected change, and we told them as soon as they got it full, we'd go to Chuck E. Cheese or something like that, right? So they religiously collected change. At some point in time, I stuck Alex Jones's right on the side of it, and no one moved it. And so when I first started my channel was when they had cashed in the 5 gallons of change, and there was like $600 in there. And we went to Chuck E. Cheese, and they had an absolute blast. And I tell everybody that I'm not sure exactly what all the fuss is about, but my Alex Jones is right jar did just take us to Chuck E. Cheese. So make of it what you will.
And Queen, I am glad you brought up the gay frogs, because we were actually just talking about that backstage before the show. And for as much as everybody loves memeing that line and laughing that line, because let's face it, it's funny, he was absolutely right about the gay frogs, because the United States Department of the Interior, spending your tax dollars and mine, actually spent something like 20 to 30 million dollars on an experiment to see if homosexuality could be chemically induced in amphibian animals. That is a real thing that happened. But nobody wants to talk about the reality. They just want to laugh at Alex Jones. I said the name. Is YouTube going to pull me off the air? I guess we'll see.
I think if you say it 3 times, he might actually show up.
And click my heels together.
And say there's no place like phone.
You know, but why is it that this man, out of all the people who say all the crazy shit you've ever heard on the internet, why was this guy the first one to be totally deplatformed and unpersoned across the entire internet?
Oh, I know why. Because he was the most absurd and the most obnoxious and the most easily pointed at and othered. And so he was the first.
And even still, even with him deplatformed and unpersoned, look at how hard people on the left still try to discredit him every single chance they get. I'm reminded of his divorce case, where the ex-wife's lawyers were trying to say that, oh, this man's crazy. He's a lunatic. He's a monster. Just look at it. Look at how he acts on his show. And of course, his lawyers respond by saying, that's, you know, he plays an exaggerated version of himself when he's on his show, because he's making an entertainment product. That's not the way he actually acts in private with his wife and kids. And so everybody in the mainstream media takes that and says, Alex Jones admits his whole show is fake. And they ran with that for weeks and weeks and weeks.
But ladies and gentlemen, I want to bring to your attention what it would sound like if Alex Jones was Alex Jones all the time. So, honey, can you go get me another cup of coffee and a couple of bagels? I really need to knock off a few pounds over here. Also, I've got a bunion on my left foot, and I think it's really starting to get infected. We're going to have to get that other podiatrist over here. You know, the one with the thick glasses. I always liked him.
And you better not turn my fucking kids gay.
I don't know, dude. I think I can get down.
No, but when you cut through all the performance art and all the absurdity and get down to brass tacks and actual facts, the claims he's actually made, way more of them have been true than not. And that's why they still try so hard to discredit him, even after they've deplatformed him.
Well, here's another issue I've had with this whole unpersoning. In order to unperson him and prove that he's done something illegal that deserves some level of criticism, he could be as distasteful as he likes, but to prove that what he said and did was illegal, you have to prove that he intended it as misinformation. And the intent of it, for all I can tell, that man believes the sky is a firmament and that there's hard glass above us full of water. I can't tell where his shtick ends and where his actual news show begins. It's as much satire as it is irony.
Yes, exactly. And that was the whole thing at issue in the divorce case.
So how do you go home at night and be exactly the same person you are during the day? I mean, that's not true for any man out there who puts in an 8-hour shift. And I seriously doubt Alex Jones is doing that 8-hour concept.
No, there is no man on the face of this earth who acts exactly the same at home in private with his wife and kids as he does at work with his coworkers.
Exactly.
That's just not a thing that happens in the real world.
When I met Harry in person, he said that one of the things that tripped him out was the fact that my channel and the jokes that happen that I do live on YouTube or whatever was like Sasquatch light. He's like, you go way harder in person when it comes to your humor. It's way darker and it's way more hard hitting in person than it is even backstage. You filter that backstage a little bit. He's like, in person, you don't. You just straight up go hard. He's like, that is hilarious. He laughed so much, so hard.
For
About
for
30 seconds.
for decades now, for 25 years now, ever since I first started meeting people in real life who I've known from online, you know, and especially back in the news group era when it was just text only and all you knew about the other person was the words they typed. I have had people tell me for my entire adult life practically that you sound exactly the same in real life as you do in the news group. I didn't know that was possible.
Right? Well, I just go a little bit harder in person. I don't know how to explain it. He couldn't put his finger on exactly what it was either because I asked. I was curious, but you know what you got to do, right?
And yes, Queen, you're right. That's one of the things he did do. And he also called 9/11 about 9 months before it happened. And that was one of the things in the Tucker interview. He actually said on his show that terrorists are going to fly planes into the World Trade Center. And
you got laughed off the air. Yeah.
Got laughed off the air and called a conspiracy theorist. Okay, I'll do the talk out now.
All right.
Thanks very much indeed for joining us, ladies and gentlemen. We sure do appreciate it when you join us for this little bit of 90 minutes of frivolity that we do every Sunday evening. Hope you can be with us again next week. See you next time. We'll have another batch of unmentionable things we're going to talk about. Have a great week. Pleasant tomorrow. Outstanding day after that. Do not comply. Get off our lawn.
3, 2, 1, 0.
You cannot subvert an enemy which doesn't want to be subverted. Subversion is the term, if you look in a dictionary or criminal code to that matter, usually is explained as a part of activity to destroy things like religion, government system, political, economical system of a country. Starting from Hollywood movie makers to professors of political science and quote-unquote experts on Soviet affairs, Kremlinologists as they call themselves. No James Bond nonsense. The rest, 85%, is always subversion, manipulation of terms. We think that subverter is a person who is going to blow up our beautiful bridges. But according to the law